Hello there and welcome to my little arty corner on YouTube. My name's Angela Porter and amongst other things I'm known for colouring books, particularly the Colour Me series with Lacey Mucklow, but also many books in the Dover Creative Haven series, as well as many others. They're all listed on my Amazon author page, I think. I'm going to have to double check that one. But I also was a science teacher for 28 years, and that love of helping people learn and discover their skills and talents and expressing themselves, even in science, I was creative. Creative in the way that work was presented. You get the idea. And it's still I think one of my driving forces to get people to be creative, but without comparing yourself to others, only comparing yourself to you and the progress you make. At this page I started yesterday, and to my eyes it's looking a complete and total mess. I've spent a lovely hour just now adding colour to some of these spherical patterns, and I've used these Ecoline Brush Pens. I haven't used the brush pen. I've put this onto a sheet of plastic and used it like a palette so I could pick it up with a water brush, because they're incredibly intense. These pens are filled with Ecoline watercolour ink, and it is watercolour, it's water soluble, it's dye based, so there are no bits like you get with watercolour paints, so it's completely transparent, so colours will see. And I've had fun playing with them, although I'm not entirely fussed on some of my colours. I keep saying I am not very good with colour. If I kept these fairly monochrome or to a limited palette, I might feel better. But I've done this because sometimes it's nice to put pattern underneath, or colour underneath the pattern before you add the pattern, because sometimes the patterns you get in the colour can help to inform what kind of pattern you add. And you might notice I've got some very strange things going on where I've deliberately dropped different colours or just plain water. This one is just water here, to create some texture in that colour. This isn't watercolour paper, so things don't they never go to plan anyway as far as I'm concerned with anything watercolour. I try and I'm not very good. But I have got a selection of pens. I've got some fine liners, but I've also got some Staedtler chipless fine liners, and I have some of the Chameleon fine liners as well. These are great. The lid has got a reservoir of that colour ink, and if you put this lid onto the tip of a different colour, you can work with a gradient. I'm not doing that today. It's enough for me to work with all of this as it is. I've also got a souffle pen here, but I did want to go hunting forgot to do this before I started, because I have here as well a white Posca pen. I have got opaque white ink here, but I'm not going to use white ink and brush or dip pen. Dip pens never seem to work for me. Doesn't matter what I do, I clean them, I do everything that people suggest to get them to work. They just don't like working for me. So with a brush it would, but I'm not in that kind of mood today, which is fine because it leaves me options for later. So let's have a look. I'm going to go back to some of the ones I coloured yesterday first, because I want to add some more detail to these, I think. And I've got here an 03 Unipin pen, and I'm just going to fill this central bit with circles. I'm going to try and keep them fairly small towards the edge, but allow them to gradually get a little bit bigger, or more bigger ones perhaps coming into the pattern as I get towards the centre. This adds more black ink towards the edges, yet still letting that colour show through. And then as the circles get larger, there's less black ink and more colour, and it just adds that feeling that we've got a highlight going on. So no need for white pens here. This is one of my favourite ways of adding texture, pattern, and making use of that pattern to create the shadow and highlight. So there we go. So hopefully that works. Once this is dried, the pen's dried properly, if I want to I can go back and add some more colour in, because that's always possible. The other thing I thought I might like to do is to do something with these sections. And I thought just simply I'm going to add a kind of checkerboard pattern. I was going to do something else, but when I started doing it I realised, nope, don't want that. That's quite stark. And I might actually I think I will fill that in, and then once this is dried I'll use one of my options for adding white to add some dots to that black area. You can always change your mind, sort of. Then round the edge, see if this one will work. This is an 04, which is in theory should be thicker than the 03, except it's a hard plastic tip, so I haven't completely destroyed it yet. And just pop that extra line in. Now I feel much happier about that particular motif if I put it back. It's got a feeling of more interest to it than there was originally. And I think the other thing I might do, if you allow me just for a moment to fertle through this pencil case, because I haven't dug out any colours that I particularly want to use. I've just dug the pencil case out. Ooh, there's a metallic silver jelly roll in here. Can you tell I don't actually pay much attention to what I have and haven't got? This is a cool grey. No, I'm looking for a darkish colour. That's my thing here. I want something that will show up. Perhaps this will, because the CG8 should actually be quite a fairly dark grey. It's a cool grey, and I thought I'd like to add something to these sections, and rather than try and find a colour that might go or use black, I'm going to use grey. So it's a bit more subtle. So I'm adding a line where the colour is darkest, where I want the section to be most shadowed, and then I'm just adding a dot or two here and there. Oh, look, that's fine. And I'm going to do the same on I could have done all the sections going around. You tell it's Saturday and I haven't really had enough sleep. I'm just waiting for my house to warm up a bit before I bath, shower, whatever. It was I left my window open overnight, not realising or not checking before I did. The temperatures were going down to below 0 overnight. So I've got a very chilly house, and I much prefer to have not so chilled house before I do things like that. So I'm just getting this Posca pen to work. I never have much luck with these in many cases. I don't know what it is about me and these. But I am going to just dot some white dots in that black area. Just to break it up. If you really wanted to, you could leave white areas there as you draw the black in, but it's far easier to do it this way round, let's be honest. Okay, I've also got these areas here, and I think what I'm going to do here is also add some extra lines in like this, just to break these up and add that little bit more of an interest. And I'm just simply putting lines in the lower section, sort of vertical lines. There I've put them all about the same distance together. With this one I'm going to slowly get the lines to become more widely spaced as I get towards the centre, and then I'm going to start getting them closer and closer together again, using that idea of density of ink to create that feeling of volume or of shape. So this one feels very flat because everything is exactly the same, but here where we start to move them apart in the centre, these feel like they're all getting bunched up because the distance is curving, as it were. And I'll do the same here. Sometimes it helps to start towards the middle, sometimes it doesn't. It's your own personal preference. There we go. Oh, excuse me. And then the top and the bottom, I think I'm going to do the same kind of thing that I did over here. And fill them with circles that get increasingly small away from the top and the bottom, from the outside edge, I think. Simply because I want perhaps a feeling of highlight here. Not sure it works on that one. I think that one's backwards, you see. So I'm going to keep them fairly large where I want some highlight, but still large in other places, perhaps getting closer towards the edge. That works a bit better on the bottom. It is just trying things out. And then what can I do with these? Well, I think I might just extend these this way with some dots. I'm not going to try and trace over this line today because I know just pop a little smaller smile in there and a few less dots. And then perhaps we can just add a bigger dot there and just a couple of dots there. So I'm still creating pattern. And the other thing I can do with that one is I am going to use white dots on the other side. I think I'd want to play around with this a bit more than I am. Try different ways of doing this out on each of these sections for future reference, because this is a sketchbook page and it is nice to have I'm just going to pop a little white highlight in some of these bigger areas there. So that's another way of doing this. Okay, I've got a really big area of colour here and I'm not quite sure what I want to do about it. I want to get this feeling of curvature going, so I think I may pop some curves in this way, but on the lower side here they need to go the opposite direction. And yep, I've managed to overdraw a line, but I'm okay with that for now. Okay, let me just, this is how to make a complete pig's ear out of things. But it may actually work out okay. So yeah, you can see where I've popped these lines in. So I've got these little channels here that I can do something with. I'll tell you why I'm having trouble is because this paper isn't flat. I could do with using a drawing board or something to tape it down onto. Or iron it. Not on too hot a temperature though, but you can get away with ironing paper on a low temperature. Okay, so that gives some direction of shape there. Now what am I going to do with these little channels? I said I had a silver jelly roll in there, but somewhere over here within arm's reach I've got a set of the metallic jelly rolls, and I think I may try to just pop some metallic stripes here. I think I might use the black lines as a kind of guide rather than I must stick in between them. I think I'd much prefer to do this with a brush and metallic paint, or ink. Jelly rolls do put out a lot of ink with a tiny bit of pressure, and it's quite a broad line. But once it's dry, I can always use a pen to go over it and tidy it up where I want it to be tidy. So that adds some colour. It would be difficult to add a lighter colour over the top of this deep, rich red ink. It's actually coming through the jelly roll, unless there wasn't enough metallic ink coming through, which could be the case. But I can always go back and add more until I get the shade of gold, the opacity of gold that I wish. Just need to leave it dry and not fuss too much, because I'm terrible for fussing with things. But that will. Try and get it for you, see if you can see. I hate trying to work out which way to move them. There you are. So you get this sudden flash of gold, which against that lovely rich burgundy colour is rather lovely. I think I'll also use perhaps some white dots in between. Just to clue the eye in there, and I'm going to leave that dry before I do anything else, because I know that if I don't leave that jelly roll to dry, I'm going to end up in a bit of a pickle, to say the least. Okay, this area here, I know I want to use a coloured pen on it, and I'm hunting down the pen that I wish to use, because I know I've got one in here, the colour I want. Oh, come on, where are you? You're lurking. It's not that one. It's a lovely reddy brown I'm looking for. Oh, see, if only I was organised. But this is life in a studio wall, you know, in your work area. Is that I can't have everything out just in sight, but I have things in pencil cases roughly organised. So I've got this reddish brown colour here. I hope it's a reddish brown. It looks reddish brown. It is reddish brown. And I'm going to fill this area with some pattern. Now I could make use of these shapes here, but they don't extend all the way through. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to use the circles like I've done before, but I think I may. Let me have a look. How about if I do this? I'm always worried when I use colours that it's going to look, oh, what on earth was I thinking kind of moment. And but I'm hoping that by making use of colours more often, I might actually go, okay, I can see that's a good idea. I like the black outline. I can hope, can't I? The nice thing about doing this is that that colour that I've done really is being pushed backwards. And the fact that I've got something that looks a little bit perhaps on the messy side, though if you like that kind of watercolour effect, then that's great. And for these, I'm not now going to try and be very precise with them. I'm deliberately changing or allowing the size of these little humps, well, they're not really semicircles, are they? But it's almost like a scaly pattern, like fish scales or mermaid scales, those kinds of things, dragon egg scales. And just want to see how that looks. And that the fact they're a little bit disorganised or more random, I think just adds to the whole thing perhaps. And it means that as the gaps get smaller and smaller here, I don't have to worry about squashing too many of these in, because I can just add fewer by making some wider, and I've already set up right for almost from the get-go, almost, that we're going to be varying things, and it's not going to be a very precise repeating pattern. It is a pattern that repeats, but it's just not symmetrical or a geometric repetition. It's so I'm trying to get these darker areas in where I can, and trying to keep things nice and neat-ish. Every now and again I look back and I think, gosh, I really didn't do that very well, as in colour these inner bits in. And then I tell myself, Angela, it's sketchbook work, it's not important to have it perfect. It's all learning about how you like to express yourself, about how art speaks, about you as a person, what your inner world is like, I suppose. And mine is very neat, very organised, very controlled. It goes back to a life, or it harks back to my earlier life, where the only thing I could control was how neat I was about things and learning and so on. I'm not going to get into it, but life generally is messy, and there's not a lot of it you can control. You kind of can. You can get the feeling that you're in control at times, but something always happens. You always get curveballs thrown at you. Yeah, weather being one. I mean, weather forecasts are great, don't get me wrong, and I'm British, which means, we're obsessed with weather. If you meet somebody, you might be queuing at a shop or outside a shop, and you go, oh, the first thing somebody will say is sort of like, oh, terrible weather, oh, isn't it lovely weather we're having today? And it opens up a conversation about weather, and then on to other things. It's one of those subjects that most people can agree on, that you can say, oh, it's raining, terrible, isn't it? Most people go, well, yes, it's terrible, but good for the gardens, good for growing things. Yeah. Hence why you often get a weather report from me. Because I go, yeah, and it is today. It's another one of those days where it's cloudy, but the sun's breaking through and there's patches of blue sky, and it's, yeah. and it's a bit parky. It's 8 degrees Celsius, parky, a bit chilly. I think that's more of a Northern England saying. I could be wrong though, rather than Welsh. Two overcoats colder is a phrase we use as well for places that are higher up and tend to be colder than where we live. So a town not too far from me is Merthyr Tydfil, and it's 2 overcoats colder up there. I'm not sure what you think about that. I'm not sure what I think about it, but it's a pattern, and it may be one I like, it may be something I like. It actually looks a bit better upside down. Perhaps I should have started at the bottom and worked my way up. But as I say, it is what it is. I am going to add some crescent moons in Zentangle Speak here. Sort of like lines like this, and try to make this one match the one on the other side, but it's not critical if it doesn't. And suddenly I've got something that looks like an owl head, doesn't it? Just a bit. And I am going to, outside of this, that area I'm going to leave blank, but the next one I'm going to fill just with some circles, just to give some variation here. Do the same on the other side. So if you can ever get the sense that this is an owl out of your head, you'll see that these circular patterns would repeat round here. And just for the edge, I'm also going to just fill this in with little lines, just to give this a bit of darkness there. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to just pop a highlight at the corner of each of those eyes. We've now got an owl, except it's an upside down owl, so it's a bat owl sleeping upside down. Did you know that baby owls sleep lying down on the floor face down because their heads are too big for their bodies, and if they tried to sleep standing up like adult owls, they just end up face planting themselves off the branch or wherever they're perched overnight roosting? I know, crazy, isn't it? Sensible of them. But yeah, so cute when you ever see a picture of them. They look like they've passed out drunk, you know, it's like, it's great. I love them. I love owls. I absolutely love owls. Oh gosh, it's got to be 4 years ago now. I went to the National Botanic Gardens at Llanarthony near Carmarthen here in South Wales, and it's a lovely place to go. They've got sort of like a Mediterranean greenhouse there, full of Mediterranean type plants, not just from the Mediterranean and Europe, but other ecosystems around the world that are very similar. And it's wonderful because it's not too hot either as a glass house, and they have these windows that open, and even on hot days you can sit in there and there's a breeze blowing through to keep the temperature just right for all these beautiful, beautiful plants. And I didn't realise, because I haven't been there for a number of years and I don't really keep up with what's going on in places, but they now have sort of like an aviary, I suppose you call it, for the National Birds of Prey, the Welsh Birds of Prey Centre, something like that. So they've got lots of birds of prey there, including red kites, which are one of my favourites, and lots of owls and falcons and whatnot, merlins as well. And they're kept in cages safely, but they are flown every day, and sometimes displays for the public, which is fantastic. I haven't done a very good job there of that one, but I thought I'd put like a checkerboard pattern in. It's subtle, it's added a lot of dark there, but I'm fine with that. And I arrived there at just the right time to see a demonstration of owls being flown, and it was fantastic. They all had their own characters, and I absolutely fell in love with Bartok, who is do you know what? I can't remember what kind of owl he was. He was not a permanent resident. He was there to be brought up and trained before he returned home. But grey owl, and his head was huge and his body tiny, and his huge eyes. And he was actually put on the bench where I was sat next to me, and I didn't know whether I could make a fuss of him because he was working, as they say. But he was absolutely stunning. Is he Bavarian owl? Something like that. He's from Eastern Europe, and just absolutely stunning. Then they had Lily, who was a tiny owl. That's the breed, and really was tiny. And she couldn't fly very far because she'd molted all her tail feathers at once, and her handler said that she didn't get the memo about only molting them one at a time. But you know, she was happy to flit around, and she was amazing. She heard a buzzard off in the sky before we could, and she could see it and everything minutes and minutes before, you know, us humans could. And she went into a position and froze as a warning to her handler, keep safe, there's danger. As soon as the buzzard had flown over, she shook herself and off she went back to doing what she was supposed to be doing, you know, which was demonstrating what a wonderful owl she was. Even more wonderful now we knew about that. So that was fab. And then the other one was a barn owl, and I have a particular fondness for barn owls, and his name was Alan. And Alan used to work for an events company, and one of his jobs was to fly down the aisle of churches with the wedding rings tied to his leg to deliver them to, you know, the bride and the groom, and then, you know, the nuptials going on. Except Alan insisted on flying up into the rafters of the church and going to sleep more often than not. So Alan got sacked, and he came to live at the Birds of Prey Centre, and he was a right show off. The other owls would take the shortest possible distance back to the handlers when they were called, and they were rewarded. There was no cruelty or anything. They were always given a treat, and you could tell that they really enjoyed doing it. And if they weren't ready to go, you know, on the clicks or sounds that their handlers used, the handlers didn't get annoyed. They just said, give them a go now in a moment. You know, whatever reason, they're doing their own thing. And it was absolutely wonderful. But Alan would just fly around. He'd take the longest route back. He'd show off in front of everybody. And I had this beautiful experience where I was trying to get a photograph of him launching off a fence post there, because, as I said, he was just beautiful. And so I had my camera up to my face, and before I knew it, he'd launched himself off and directly towards me, and his feathers brushed the top of my head, my forehead, my hand, and I could feel the wind from beneath his wings going by. It was magical for me, absolutely magical. I've had a love of owls since I was really quite young, as well. We actually looked after a tawny owl for a while when I was a child. One of my father's charge hands had found this owl blown down with a broken wing, a young owl, It's a baby really, and brought him in to work, saying, oh, Mr. Porter will know what to do with it. Well, Mr. Porter did. He brought it home to us, and the vet saw it and said, oh, it'll mend, it'll be fine, just need to feed the owl and, you know, look after it, and when it's ready you should be able to release it back into the wild, which is exactly what we did. But my father built the owl a roost and a table so he could sit with us, and his favourite place to perch other than there was on the top of my mother's head. So my mother used to have really long hair, and he'd sit there and tease it up into like a nest. She used to wear it in one of these buns on the top of her head that was like a donut if you looked down from above, and so it looked just like a nest to him. And so he'd often perch there and go to sleep. And one day one of the neighbours came in and was talking to my mother, and suddenly the owl woke up. We called him Ollie Beak. Just seemed the right thing to do, I guess. I think there was something to do with a children's programme, I can't remember exactly. Woke up, turned its head, blinked its eyes and looked at the neighbour, who ran out screaming and refused to come and visit again because she was absolutely terrified of birds. And well, eventually the owl got better, the wing mended, and it was time to let him go, and it was really sad. But we knew there were a colony of tawny owls up the country lane near us by a farm, so we took him up there in the hopes that he'd, you know, be accepted into the group, and it seemed that he was, because we used to, for years afterwards, when it was really quiet at night, we got to know his particular hoot, and so we recognised him, and we knew that he was at least alive and well, and, you know, everything else. So it's quite sad to have to let him go, you know, especially as kids. But ultimately it was the best thing for him. Absolutely stunning though. So yes, I've got a bit of a thing about owls. They're one of my favourites. Ravens are my top favourite though. And most of the members of the corvid family, because they are hilarious. They really, really are. I find them absolutely, I say, hilarious. That's the only way I can describe them. They're hilarious. Okie dokes, I am going to take the gold, no I'm not, I'm going to use white. Because that gold pen over here, the black lines are really going to need a serious amount of tidying up. But I am going to put some highlights in these here. And I also think I'm only going to do one section, but these lines don't make it all the way top to bottom alternately. It's the Zentangle pattern zip, and so I'm going to put a white dot at the end of each of these lines where they end, more or less, and that will give a different bit of a highlight, a bit of a lift here. So this colour is quite dull. It's nice enough, but it's, you know, I'm going, why did I think I wanted to use that colour, Angela? Well, because I did. But this is one of the colours one of the parts I coloured whilst listening to Lord of the Rings, read by Auntie Circus. One of my favourite books of all time, perhaps. And I never tire of listening to it. I really don't. I said I was only going to do one of those, and I did more, didn't I? It doesn't take long, see. So I'm re-listening to it. I like to listen to audiobooks when I'm doing art, because it doesn't require me to look up or anything. And if I miss a bit of the story, if it's familiar to me like Lord of the Rings, I think I've listened to it or read it so many times since I was 16 that I'm actually in the story somewhere. But they're familiar to me, so I can just carry on or rewind and listen to it if it's a bit that I particularly enjoy. So, you know, I've got options there. So, you know, there's always things that we can do, and I'm going to just dot some white around the centre of these just to bring that a highlight in and offer up something extra there. The other thing I wanted to do was to add some white here somewhere, and I think I'm going to do that by adding 3 dots at the end of each of these. Why 3 dots? It's because I'm obsessed with making sure I use odd numbers where possible. 1 would look a bit odd, but 3 looks cool. I'm also going to add white dots in here. Come on, this pen needs a bit of help again, I think. That's okay, so let's see if we can get some of these done. Okay. It's amazing how just little details like this, simple as anything, but adding to what we've already done just lifts this. The other thing I'm going to do is I am going to pop some dots in the middle of these sections, but I'm being careful to make sure I cover about the same area, proportionate amount of area. So that looks quite fun. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with these golden bits. I think I'll just leave them for now. Okay, any others that I want to add any white to? This one here, I think I might just go back and add some white in the middle of these dots, just to help to lift this up. I'm not going to do any there, and this up here I'm just going to leave, but I think I might put 1 big dot in the centre and then have just an arc of little dots on that one. So there we are. That's me done for now with you, because, well, it's nearly 3/4 of an hour. I know somebody's going to say they could listen to me all day, but I need to do stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this one and the story time. How did I get onto owls? Oh, I know. This one here. That one is responsible. It's actually, I think, is my least favourite of them all. And I can't do much about it except, let me have a look here, except I could, I'm looking for a specific colour which I can't see from over there. So can I see that here now? Oh God, blind as a bat today, with or without my glasses. That'll do. I've got here a chalk pastel. This is truly going mixed media, isn't it? I think what I'd like to do here with the chalk pastel is I'm going to add a shadow around the edge. This actually isn't dark enough, so let's see what it does, and then I can always come back and add some more. The nice thing about these chalk pastels is that once you've spread them out, they become pretty translucent. They're not transparent, but what's underneath, as long as you don't go too thick or too dark, will actually show through. So what I'm doing here is getting a bit more of a shadow going around the edges, just to help to give some more dimension and interest perhaps, and also to knock this pattern back a bit, I think. And it's nice, but it is a bit overwhelming. And as I say, you try things, and if it doesn't work out, well, it doesn't work out. All I've done is used a bit of time, a bit of paper, but I've learned a lesson perhaps, or made an observation or something I can make a note of. You know, this works or this doesn't. So that's actually worked quite nicely. That's intensified that colour a little bit. I think I'd like it a bit redder. So if I get a reddish colour here, I've got different brands of pencils, of pastels in my pot here. So that's a Conte pastel. The previous one was a Stabilo Carbothello, which happened to be water soluble. Well, parts are. The chalk bit isn't, but the coloured dye is. Oh no, that's made a lovely warm colour there, hasn't it? Perhaps I can find a nice yellow. This is quite a bright yellow, but perhaps I can pop some yellow in that centre bit there, just to lift that up. And it's toning. What's happening is that fine liner is being toned down, knocked back that little bit. And if you really wanted to get fussy, you could put white on there or whatever. In fact, I could do that. I've got a white chalk here. White chalk's funny stuff. It's just going to try and use the side of this because I haven't got a clean one of these available. Some of these white chalks will actually give a white charcoal is better, but I don't know where that is. It's in here somewhere. I've got white charcoal somewhere. And you get this funny, maybe that's a charcoal, you get this lovely kind of texture when you look at it. It's a strange thing, but a beautiful thing. It's almost like bits of it stick up and catch the light and I'm never quite sure whether I like white on top of colours because it does make them quite pastel and muted, but in this case, as I'm experimenting, I'm just trying things out. You didn't see that, I'm sorry. I got carried away with doing this. But that kind of works. And if I don't like it, well, I don't like it. But I can also get a, hopefully, yeah, I've got a kneadable eraser here, and I can, oh, look at all of that. The colour will spill out everywhere, but as long as you haven't rubbed it in too hard, you can pick it up, and I can just pick up some of that and just allow the underneath colour to shine through just a little bit more. Take that little bit of eraser off that I've just used, and I'll stick that on the tin of the, oh, I had a piece there, on the tin with the chalk pastels, so that I've always got a piece there for doing exactly that. So it sort of works, sort of does. Of course I could do that to any of the others. This one I could, if I hadn't used the fine liner to add the pattern, that brown pattern, if I'd used it, say Sakura Pigma, one of the brown pens, the microns, then I could have gone back with watercolour and used it, but with these, they're water soluble, so they'll move. Some of the pattern will be left. So I've still got loads of patterns to do here, haven't I? I haven't quite finished all of this yet. But I've only used, I say I've only, I know I make it look easy, I know that, but it is practice and it does become easier with practice. But you think about what I've used little circles, curvy lines and dots, straight lines, zigzag filled in patterns, and little arches here and here on there, and nothing much more than that. Oh, the checkerboard pattern there, which is just basically straight lines at 90 degrees ish. I did bend the lines to try and get it feeling like there's that inside curves upwards, you know, it's like a ball sticking out. It needs some help. I've got to work out how I'm going to do that. I need to add some shadows in here to intensify the shadows, but I've still got plenty of these to do. Now whether I finish them is neither here nor there. It's a sketchbook page. It can live in my sketchbook. I think I will, you know, glue it into my sketchbook shortly, and I can return to it from time to time. and I'll try and remember, if I do that, I will show you what I've done, or I will do some of it with you. I want to do this one. I love the colours in this one. I love that golden colour there. I really do like that kind of golden colour. You can tell I've used it a lot here as well. And the greens. Anyway, I'm wittering. I'm going to wish you a lovely day. Enjoy your Saturday and your Sunday, because there won't be a video tomorrow, because suddenly yesterday my day got busier, so there's no way I'd manage to fit videoing in tomorrow. So take time to be creative. I'll try to post what I've done creatively or something about that in the community section, so keep your eye open for that if you pop onto YouTube and see what I've been doing. It may be lettering, because I've been doing a lot of lettering practice, and it's practice, or it may be something like this, but I'll be sure to let you know. So until I see you again, take care, look after yourselves and be creative. Bye bye for now.